Hi, it's Kai, and today we are going to be starting a new series on my page, which is going to essentially be a makeup review series, but it's going to be what I'm calling first impressions to full review, which is where I film myself trying out a product for the first time, experiencing it for the first time, and all of the first impressions that you would maybe get in a get ready with me video or something like that. But I also recognize sometimes a product is tried in a get ready with me or shop my stash video and then kind of goes into the ether, and there's never any like full thoughts or a culmination point or a review or anything on that product. And honestly, I kind of miss standalone makeup reviews as well. I think, again, the shop my stash or get ready with me with new makeup videos, they're fun. I enjoy filming them as well, but sometimes I do want to see just how does this product work, and I want something more than like a 30-second, oh my gosh, this is so great, like type of short form video that has gotten popular, or more than a first impressions. So anyway, I hope other people find this video series helpful. I hope it kind of meshes the two together or marries the two together in a way that is informative and also shows that, hey, sometimes you're not lying about a product if your ideas about it change from the first time you try it to later on. But it is cool to have maybe a little bit more transparency as to those changes in your thoughts on a product. And hopefully a video like this kind of captures that. Of course, I could change my mind about any of these products afterwards as well. Nothing is set in stone. We're always in flux. That's a very Scorpio thing to say, I know, like we're always transforming and dying and becoming new people, and sometimes the makeup that you like at one point in your life is not the makeup that you're gonna like in another point. Either way, we're just going to stop the chatter and get into it. You're first going to see, of course, the first impressions part of this video, and then you'll come back here with me and we will get into the full review of it. So I hope you guys enjoy this. And of course, it would probably be helpful if I told you what product we're focusing on, even though there is a title and thumbnail for communicating that as well. But today we are going to be focusing on the Violette FR Plume Eyeshadows, their Feather Shimmer Veil in the shade Bronze d'Or, and their Feather Matte Veil in the shade Le Au Cafe. So anyways, we'll probably also mention that in the next portion of the video, but whatever, we're gonna stop the chatter and get into the video. I'm gonna be so fucking for real right now. I have zero motivation. Like, my energy in this video, or this specific part of the video, may be a little bit low because one of my pet sitting clients just pissed me off. But outside of that, I really need to start using these and do my first impressions on them, or start using them so that I can actually review them for the purpose that they need to be reviewed for. So without further ado, I may not even do a full face of makeup today. It might just be eyeshadows and first impressions of these, but these are the Violette FR Plume Eyeshadows. They're the Feather Shimmer Veil and Feather Matte Veils, and I have the shades Bronze d'Or and Cafe Au Lait. Of course, the packaging, a nice little kind of like texture, well, not textured, but it has that soft touch type of cardboard feel to it. It has their classic blue in the packaging and for the actual compact. And honestly, I like this. It looks kind of futuristic slash like a pebble, or like a pebble under the sea. It kind of reminds me of that fish book. I will put a picture of it. I can't remember, but like the rainbow fish, is that what it is? But I'm really into it. It is plastic. It's very lightweight. I probably wouldn't want to put too many things that would like crush this packaging, you know, but it could also, I don't know, it doesn't necessarily feel flimsy, but it is plastic. This is the shade Bronze d'Or, which seems like it almost has a pinky purpley shift to it, which I kind of like better than, say, a bronzy silvery bronze or antique bronze, or a bronze with gold shimmer. I feel like a bronze with gold shimmer, we kind of all have that And I'm sure I probably have a shade similar to this in some palette, but again, I do like the pinky purpley shift that I'm seeing so far. So that's the first shade. And the second shade I have here is Cafe Au Lait. And this is a matte eyeshadow. Again, kind of like a mauve toned brown. But I really like this packaging. It's just so unique, and in a sea full of black packaging, I feel like, again, I like these little pebbles. I like my little fish scale pebbles. Okie dokie, so we are going to use these according to the box. The directions are using your fingers or a brush, glide the pigment across your eyelids, layering for increased color payoff. So I think maybe since it'll be first impressions building up to a review, I can use it with my fingers today since I may not even do a full face, and it can be a little bit more like I immediately go wash my hands afterwards and everything. So we're gonna take my glasses. Actually, before I take my glasses off, let's zoom in a little bit so that you guys can see the eyes more. If I end up going a little bit out of frame or blurry, I'm sorry. My vision is blurry right now trying to look at the viewfinder. My vision is blurry looking at my own face in my mirror that is this close to me, like right in front of me. So again, sorry about it. I think we are going to go in with the shade Lait Au Cafe first, because this is kind of one of those, you know, matte brown shades. It does look like it may be a little bit lighter, but sometimes shades can appear deeper or lighter in the pan and then deeper on my skin tone. I've been surprised by them before, so I'm just gonna say, ooh, it kind of feels like plushy. I don't know if you can see that I'm getting a little bit of a thumbprint in there. It feels like a, let me see, what, is there anything on the back of what the texture should be? I will eventually put all of that information. It says feather shimmer and feather matte veil. It's just a very interesting plushy texture. Would kind of liken it to something like the ColourPop Super Shock Cheek, kind of. Like, it just feels, again, plushy, almost like a gel, or not a gel, like a cream and a powder at the same time. Anyway, I don't have any primer on. We're just gonna go in straight on my lid, and actually we'll see how it works throughout the day going straight on my lid. I have a few pet sitting gigs going out in the hot sun. I feel like that definitely gives a nice little wash of color that doesn't look, at least not right now, too, you know, chalky or like it's too light for my skin tone. This would be a really nice shade to just throw all over the lid if you needed to just, or wanted to, I guess, look. I don't feel like anyone needs to put on makeup to go anywhere or be presentable, so I'm trying to adjust my language for things like that. But if you just wanted that quick, I want to look a little bit put together with some makeup, or like I put a little bit of effort into my appearance, I guess. It's hard because I can make arguments for any of those things kind of being loaded language, such as the life of someone who has anxiety and OCD and just literally lives inside their own brain constantly. I even feel like just the texture of it makes it look not like you really need to blend it out at all. It just naturally diffuses on its own. I am going to use a little brush. This is an e.l.f. crease brush, and just see, can I see it picking up on the actual bristles of this brush? I do feel like I see it picking up on the bristles. I feel like this is a formula that probably works best by applying with your finger, and then if you want to soften it with a brush, soften the edges with a brush. But again, with my skin tone, this is looking like a really nice one and done type of shade. However, of course, we have another shade to try out, so we're gonna use both of them. This is Bronze d'Or. So again, this is that bronze with what looks like a little bit of a kind of pinky shimmer to it. So I'm gonna put it on just one eye on top for now and see what that looks like. Yeah, it definitely has a bit of a pinky type of sparkle to it, but I'm not mad at it. I feel like it's maybe just a hair darker. Like this eye, from what I can tell, the shade on the lid looks a little bit darker than this eye. So it kind of is giving me a little bit of like a natural but kind of still sultry, smoky-ish look. I'm not mad at it thus far. I don't think it's something that you'll want to use if you want like a high impact shimmer. It's definitely giving more of that barely there, kind of like the leftover glitter from the night before's makeup. I kind of like that vibe though. It's like nice. It looks a certain level of put together and fallen apart at the same time, and I feel like we could use that in the world of clean girl. Okie dokie, bringing you guys in just a little bit more so you can see this is what those shades are looking like. Like I said, the shimmer is definitely not like the eye-catching, super reflective, almost glittery type of shimmer. It's definitely more of almost like a sweaty eye, but without it being wet necessarily, like when your eyes just kind of start glistening because you've been sweating. I do like this combination together. Let me turn off this light in the front so that you can see it in different lighting or without so many bright lights at it. Again, I'm not too mad at it. Do I feel like it's anything revolutionary outside of the texture? But even the texture, it reminds me, again, a lot of like the ColourPop Super Shock Cheek type of texture. So it's not necessarily completely new. But again, I like these shades. I like how it's almost a little bit pinky purpley, but still bronzy and smoky. And again, I like that kind of deconstructed, like leftover makeup, last night's makeup type of vibe that it's giving me. I feel like it would look really good with just a little bit of smudgy liner. So I'll put a little bit on, I'll indulge. And this is what it looks like under my glasses. I feel like with the glasses on top, which I've said before, sometimes your glasses can make your makeup look less dramatic. So something like this with my glasses on looks very like barely there. This is an office makeup look or office eyeshadow look in my opinion. I do like, again, how it's still like a little bit smoldering, sultry underneath it. I like that there's still a little bit of reflect. Like I think you can still, if we didn't have as much reflection from the lights I have, I feel like, you know, I don't know how to, other than just taking off the glasses, but I do feel like there's the reflectiveness there. So far, my first impressions of these is that I enjoy them. I think they're nice. Do I think that they're necessarily something I would, if I saw them in the store, have wanted to spend my money on? I might have swatched them and been like, oh, I like the textures, but I think at second or first glance, I should say, or maybe second glance actually, like at first glance, I would be like, the textures are nice, the shadows are pretty, but maybe these are things that I already have in my collection. Admittedly, the palettes that I'm thinking about having some shades like this, I think are discontinued. Like this shade with the kind of pinky bronzy reflect, it's reminding me specifically of some of the shades I have in Nabla Cosmetics palettes. And again, I'm pretty sure at least 2 of the 3 Nabla Cosmetics palettes I have currently are discontinued. So it could be a replacement for something like that or give a similar vibe. Let me see if I can kind of pull them out and show what I mean. So this one is still available, but I think, I don't know that Nabla has like a US, like I think you can order off their website, but I'm pretty sure it's coming from Italy. I'm not sure they have a US retailer anymore. Anyway, I was thinking specifically kind of like this shade. I love this shade so much. That's what reminds me, or what the Bronze d'Or shade kind of reminds me of, but just a softer version of that has a lot more of a high impact shimmer to it. So for someone who maybe doesn't, again, want that type of high impact shimmer, you know, even the Cafe LA, I don't feel like there's an exact color match in here, but I feel like it kind of goes along with some of the tones in this one. Again, similar type of thing here where I feel like it goes along with these tones. In this one, this is is Dreamy 2. It is discontinued now. And again, it reminds me of even this Hidden Place shade down here. But this one still, I would say, has a little bit more, like the Nabla Cosmetics shade has a little bit more of a shimmer. This is more of a barely there, just a little bit like a demure kind of flirty type of, I feel like it's, and that feels kind of corn on the cob to say, like it's flirting. You know, the eyeshadow feels like it's flirting versus being like straightforward and coming up to you, being high impact and saying, can I get your number? Does that make sense? Did that analogy make that less corny? I hope it did. Anyway, I definitely feel like using these improved my mood, and maybe just putting a little bit of makeup on and talking about them improved my mood. So we can put a point in these weren't so frustrating, even using them on my hands, which I usually am not a big fan of using makeup with my hands, but this one wasn't too ridiculous with the texture. I don't feel like my finger has a whole bunch of leftover shadow and shimmer and stuff on it, even though I haven't completely washed my hands yet. So far to me, the usability of these and the overall like vibe I get from them, very positive. Again, I feel like I started this section of the video a little bit more angry. So we'll try them in more ways over the next few days or weeks or however long I want to test them out before I can do a full review on them. Okay, I am back today because I wanted to show how the shade Bronze d'Or shows up on my eyes alone without being overlapped with the Lait Au Cafe shade. I realized yesterday I put them on top of each other and you only got to see what this one looked like on my eye on its own. And I also wanted to say, which I will probably include in like the longer review portion of this as well, the packaging, even though it is plastic, I'd have to say that it's pretty sturdy because my cats definitely got a hold to this last night and they were knocked down on the floor, specifically this one. Of course, I wouldn't have necessarily expected the eyeshadow to shatter or anything because it is kind of a hybrid between that pillowy cream and powder texture, but it also didn't pop out of the component. This isn't broken, there's no cracks in it or anything, and I have like the laminate flooring. I don't live in a place with carpet everywhere, so it did fall, or it did survive, I should say, the fall from, you know, being played with by cats. So if that's important to you, that's another point in the positive column for this. Maybe it would even survive past TSA and bags being thrown. That's what I'm thinking. Like, again, being a pretty durable product to be played around with on the floor by my cats. Anywho, like I said, I wanted to show what this looks like, and I do feel like the best payoff is with a finger in this. This isn't the type of formula that I feel like works best with a brush, though on this eye I will show what this shade looks like with a brush as well. This is what it's looking like with just my finger, though again, like I said before, I feel like this is the type of formula that you can wear with just your finger. It diffuses out pretty evenly, so you don't feel the need a brush, I guess. I also wanted to say that I do have some eyeshadow primer on today because without eyeshadow primer yesterday, I noticed some creasing, though with the type of shade this is, because it's almost one of those bronzy shades that melts into my skin pretty well, it honestly didn't look bad once the natural oils and the creasing came through. You could barely tell that it was creased, honestly. And again, the natural oils coming through the eyeshadow, it didn't take away from how sparkly it looked or like ate at the eyeshadow itself and made it look super patchy outside of where I just have natural creases and lines in my eyes. So let me give a little close up. Hopefully my camera is focusing properly, but this is what it's looking like on my eye. Let me turn off this light in front as well, because sometimes that is a little bit like too much of the bright light at once. But yeah, this is what it's looking like. I'm going to start off with this kind of flat top brush to test it with a brush on this eye. I feel like, again, it probably works best with a finger, and this is the type of brush that I feel like is dense and compact like a finger. Yeah, I just feel like this formula is definitely one that probably works better. Like, I would love to see, and I'll probably look up in my research phase of, you know, looking at these, I'll look up and see what type of brush they recommend, the brand recommends to use it with, because it's picking up on the brush and it's building up on my eye, but I definitely feel like using it with a finger is easier. I also feel like using it with a finger diffuses it up into the crease of your eye and again just makes it look a little bit more effortlessly blended. This is what I'm getting with the brush, but honestly, I'm just not patient enough to do it. I'm sorry. So I'm gonna go ahead and just build it up on my eye with with my finger. Let's be descriptive with our words. Yeah, I'm not usually a person who will sacrifice using my fingers for color payoff or for a certain formula, but I do like the shimmer and the look of this on my eye enough to use it with my finger. I also think that I'm just getting a little bit more better. I'm getting a little bit better as far as my OCD and putting my fingers in my makeup and all of that is concerned. So yay for progress. Okie dokie, again, this is what it is looking like on my eyes, just the Bronze d'Or shade and without the light in the front. I was saying yesterday how I didn't feel like there was a lot of impact or shimmer, or that this wasn't necessarily the most light catching type of shimmer shade or shimmer eyeshadow shade. And I have to say, again, once my natural oils started coming through, I feel like there was something, like I was filming this video, I'll try to link it below or put a picture of a screen grab of it, but once it was kind of, my natural oils were kind of seeping through on my eyelid, I feel like it almost did, like the longer it wore on my eyes, it almost felt like it was getting more eye-catching, if that makes sense. So again, one that as I'm wearing it, I'm liking it more and more versus being like, I don't feel like this is anything special. But specifically the shade, I'm gonna have to again try out the Lait Au Cafe shade more on its own as well. I don't know if I said it in the last portion of the video, but I think the actual next portion of this video will be the full length, full ending thoughts after testing this for a little bit longer. Okie dokie, so now that we have our first impressions out of the way and I've been trying these out for almost a month or maybe even a little bit over a month now, I have my full thoughts on it. And the way that I'm going to break down my reviews is by the 3 Ps, which is price, packaging, and performance. I feel like those are kind of the most important parts of a product, or what most people would want out of a review. If there's any other questions about these products that aren't encompassed within those 3 Ps, then let me know and I can definitely, you know, see how to fit it in. But overall, I feel like those are the main highlight points that people are going to kind of want to know about a product, new or old. So starting off the price with these eyeshadows, they are $32 a piece. And I did some breakdowns as far as the price of these and the price per ounce or price per milliliter calculations, all of that stuff, and did it in comparison to some similar products. So this is $32 for a 0.08 ounce eyeshadow product, and that comes out to being $400 per ounce, which I know it kind of seems a little bit scary to think of your products like that. And when I first saw that number, I was just like, dang, that's really expensive per ounce of product. But you have to remember, eyeshadows are products that usually aren't going to have as much product in it. How many times can I say product? I need a thesaurus. I wish my brain was like loaded with a thesaurus. I mean, it kind of is, because that's what your brain does with language, but sometimes when I'm in the midst of filming, I can't pull it quick enough and I just repeat the same word over and over. So for an eyeshadow, honestly, you're not going to get like loads and loads of product. And it's not a category of makeup where I feel like I need a lot of the eyeshadow. And maybe that just comes from having a collection the size of mine, where I probably have every eyeshadow color known to man, or most of the eyeshadow colors known to man, so I'm not at a loss for any, and I'm probably never going to finish every single eyeshadow that I have, you know? But I will say, for someone who maybe has their staple eyeshadow color, staple shade, and staple look, and if this was a part of their staple, I guess, look, $32 per for your everyday eyeshadow, it can definitely be a little bit pricey. But again, for comparison, I pulled some similar products, and this is based on what Sephora says are similar products to these. So there's the Makeup by Mario Master Mattes Cream Eyeshadow, and those are $25 for 0.06 ounces of products, which actually comes out to $416.67 per ounce, so more expensive than these. Then there's the Armani Beauty Liquid Eyeshadow, which is $39 for 0.13 ounces. And even though that is a higher technical price point because it's a luxury beauty brand, it actually comes out to $300 an ounce. Then there is the Violette FRU Paint Liquid Eyeshadow, so their own liquid eyeshadow formula, and it's a liquid eyeshadow and liner format, so I don't know if that would necessarily impact, or I do feel like that would impact, of course, how much product you're getting. But in those, it's $32, so same price as these, but you get 0.1 fluid ounce of product, which comes out to $320 per ounce, so a lower price per ounce point than these eyeshadows. But I honestly feel like the U Paint, again, kind of flexes a little bit in a different category, as it also being marketed as a liner, and I feel like from what I remember going through the shades, they're definitely different-ish type of shades than what is offered here. Next is the Danessa Myricks Color Fix, which is also a little bit of a different product that's multi-use, eyes, lips, face. You're supposed to be able to use it for everything, mix in with your foundation to give it a different undertone even. Again, that is one that is meant to be used as a multi-use product, and it is $22 for 0.34 fluid ounces, so that comes out to only $64.71 per ounce. That one is definitely the least expensive per ounce, but it makes sense given that that product is, you know, meant to be multi-use. And then I also looked at a few brands that are not sold at Ulta. So the About Face Matte and Shimmer Fluid Paints, the matte ones are $17 and the shimmer ones are $18. So respectively, that comes out to $113.33 per ounce and $120 per ounce. So again, a lower price point, and you get 0.15 fluid ounces or 0.15 ounces of product in those. And there's the Stila Liqua Play eyeshadows, and those are $25 for 0.153 ounces, which comes out to a $163.40 per ounce price. And then of course there are the ColourPop Super Shock shadows, which are that cream to powder type of formula. And I would say, as we'll get into with the performance aspect of this review, that this has what I would say is the closest to a formula like a Super Shock cheek, in that it is a cream to powder, but also kind of like play doughy, like it moves around. It's very difficult to explain the formula of a ColourPop Super Shock formula, if that makes sense. It's just very unique, and while there are, again, more brands kind of coming out with that type of concept of cream to powder, we all know that the ColourPop, that kind of formula, is so different from what I feel like previously was thought of as cream to powder. Anyway, ColourPop Super Shock Cheek, which is going to be the least expensive out of all of these, obviously, but it is $7 a piece, or I believe they are still $7. Well, I checked before I did this video, so if they've gone up in like a week since I pulled all of this information, then that says a lot more about where the economy is headed than what I have. But it's $7 for 0.074 ounces. So you do technically get less product, but when it comes to the price per ounce, it comes out to $94.59 per ounce. So again, actually the Danessa Myricks Color Fix, which again, not necessarily the one-to-one comparison to something like these. I would say the ColourPop Super Shock shadows would be more of an equal comparison, but this Danessa Myricks is technically the least expensive per ounce. This one is the second least expensive per ounce. And then I also have the Merit cream eyeshadows. Those are $26 for 0.17 ounces, and that would be a $153 per ounce price point. And then also outside of Ulta or Sephora, more indie, Mob Beauty. I couldn't find the size listed for them, so I don't have a price per ounce, comparison, but it is $20, and they are a cream clay eyeshadow. So I feel like kind of a liquid, or not liquid, cream to powder, or maybe it's a creamier powder. I'm not very knowledgeable about Mob Beauty and their formulas and stuff, but honestly, looking up their stuff for this video, it did make me a little bit interested in it. Anywho, back to the focus of this review video. This is one of the more expensive, I think out of all of these, the only more expensive per ounce than this product that is in the same kind of cream or liquid to powder eyeshadow formulation is the Makeup by Mario Master Mattes Cream eyeshadows. So I would say on the pricier side of things. I will say for a single eyeshadow, especially with the size of the collection that I have, had these not been sent to me for review on another platform, I'm making this review technically of my own volition and everything. But if I had not been sent it through one of those testing platforms, I'm not sure this is one that initially with that price point and with the shades that there are, I would have thought to pick up. So getting into the shades, they have 8 shades total, 4 of their mattes and 4 of their shimmer shades. I obviously have 2 of the shades to test out here, but as far as the shades, if I look at them on, the Sephora app, there is, for the matte shades, a Bois Brulee shade, which is a neutral medium brown. There is Plume Violette. I don't know French, so I'm probably going to butcher all of these, but it is what it is. I come from a household where we at least try. But that one is more of a purpley, it's a muted cool violet, but a kind of purpley pink shade. Then there is Charbon, or maybe Carbon Fume, I don't know, deep smoky charcoal, which is a kind of charcoaly blackish gray. I would say it's more on the gray side than a black. And then there is the one that I have for their mattes, which is Late Au Cafe, which is described as a milky beige brown. This is a Late Au Cafe shade that is described as a milky beige brown. And honestly, it does have a slight pinkish, maybe mauvey undertone, especially on my skin tone. Then for the shimmer shades, the one that I have is Bronze d'Or, which is described as a neutral luminous bronze, and this is what that looks like. And it's definitely a bronze shade. I will say, as we've seen on the eyes in an application, this definitely has a little bit more of a pinkish shimmer to it. I'm not sure that it leans either warm or cool, so I would say it's still neutral, but it definitely, like when I hear of a neutral bronze, I don't know what type of shimmer I think of. I think of maybe more of a multicolor shimmer. So I actually am appreciative that this just isn't the same type of bronze shade as every other bronze shade, like a golden bronze or an antique bronze or a bronze with some silver flecks in it. Like, it does have a little bit of something different going for it. Then there's Ombre Fume, which is a warm copper amber. There's Orchidee Celeste, which is a luminous orchid purple. And then there is Poisseret de Lune, a cool moonlight graphite. And so you can probably see, looking at the shades that they have, that there is a bit of a pairing kind of going on between them. Like, they have a matte kind of purpley pinky shade and then a shimmery purpley pinky shade, and then they have like a neutral bronze shade and then like a neutral brown shade. I will say that I mean, the colors, especially once we get into the performance and what the claims are for this product, they do make sense in my opinion, but I don't feel like they're necessarily anything special or different. Like, it's kind of the same color palette that we see for a lot of launches, especially now. And if I'm being completely honest, within the matte shades, I don't feel like we needed both the Boys Brulee shade and the Late Au Cafe shade. I feel like having two kind of neutrally browns, but not having a deeper, more saturated brown, which, I mean, I guess technically they have in a more saturated color, the charcoal color, but not everyone wants like a smoky gray, like it pulling gray. You might want something, I don't know. I just feel as though these two shades, especially on someone of my skin tone, might be a little bit redundant. And out of the two, as we'll get into, I feel like I might have liked the Boys Brulee shade a little bit more for my skin tone because it is a hair darker. So I feel like that would be maybe a little bit more of a universal shade versus the Late Au Cafe one. Of course, I haven't seen these shades in person, but even within the shimmery shades, because the Bronze d'Or shade that I have has a more pinky undertone to it, or a kind of pinky shimmer to me. I don't know how much more pinky purple the Orchidee Celeste shade would come off, but it seems like it may, because it has a little bit of a bronze undertone to it, it might come off too similarly again on my skin tone. So I do wish the shades, like maybe there was a little bit of something. I don't even know necessarily what other shades I would have liked for this collection. Again, maybe a deeper kind of smokier neutral brown, something that's not quite as cool as a smoky gray, but I guess then again, you could get multiple shades if you wanted to mix and match them together. Moving into the packaging aspect of this product, I actually quite enjoy the packaging. I think in a sea of beige and white and black packaging, that even if the shades aren't necessarily the most colorful inside the compacts, that at least it's pretty to look at on the outside. It is colorful to look at on the outside. When I see these, I'm immediately like, oh, those are my Violette FR eyeshadows, versus seeing another eyeshadow, which it's like no shade, no tea to eyeshadows that come like this. But seeing an eyeshadow in a pot like this, or seeing an eyeshadow in packaging like this, like it's just very distinctive in my personal opinion. Even something like the Glossier Skywashes, I feel like this is kind of distinctive packaging for a, you know, doe foot applicator type of cream slash liquid eyeshadow. But again, I just feel like I look at these and I know it's Violette FR. I feel like they're so pretty to look at. I like the bright blue. And then there's even just the shape of it, because it's not completely round or, you know, an even shape. It looks to me kind of like a clamshell almost. It makes me feel like a little mermaid doing her makeup. And as someone who has quite a bit of water in her birth chart, I like feeling like a little mermaid, a nymph, a mythical creature when I'm doing my makeup. I feel like the outer packaging doesn't necessarily accumulate dirt. Like, again, I've been using these for a month or over a month now. And then even the inner packaging, this gold trim, it's not collecting a whole bunch of fingerprints or anything. We've got the Violette FR, and I do feel like the gold makes it look and feel a little bit more luxurious, because this is a hard shell kind of lightweight plastic. And I feel like most people would feel the plastic on these and feel like, especially for $32, that it could feel more luxurious. But I think the product pricing, or where the pricing is coming from a little bit with these, is how custom the packaging is. I will say, I don't necessarily mind the hard shell plastic, because I have cats and my cats love to come up here on my makeup desk and play with my makeup and knock things down. And they knocked these down multiple times to play around, literally kick them around. I found them in my kitchen, in my bathroom, like they just will knock it around on the floor until it's somewhere or until they get bored of it. And while it is a cream to powder formula, so I wouldn't necessarily have expected it to completely break and fall apart the way a powder eyeshadow or a powder, like just straight up powder product might have. I also appreciate that the packaging hasn't broken, isn't dented or anything like that. You don't see any stress marks anywhere. Again, if it passes the cat's playing with it test, I do appreciate that, because there are some products that do not pass that test at all. Deeper into the packaging, it has a little divot down here so that you can put your nail in, or put, if it's a little too small for you, put something in there to be able to pry it open. I don't find it to be too difficult to open with my level of dexterity, but I also don't have dexterity issues in general outside of dropping things a lot. This isn't the size of packaging that I found to drop a lot. I feel like it's a little bit bigger than, again, your classic eyeshadow packaging, and because of that, it allows me, again, as someone who drops things a lot, to have a little bit of a better grip on it. With that being said, this opening isn't magnetic, it's just a snap closure. And I do question over time, with this being a hinge, like opening it and closing it, will that end up being a problem? Will it be something where is this not closing completely and then the product dries out quicker than it would have if there was some sort of snap closure? It doesn't look like it's open at all or anything like that. But again, it just makes me wonder, is this something, and even back here, like where the hinge is, I don't know if you can tell. This is going to be like really, really nitpicky kind of, but where the hinge is, it's not completely flush in the back. So there technically is a little bit of area where like I can see the free air kind of floating in here. So I don't know if that's something that will over time introduce air into the product such that it will dry out quicker. I've had these again for a month, haven't noticed that at all, but it's something to potentially consider long term. I don't know if I communicated that as correctly as I wanted to. It's just not completely flush in the back, if that makes sense. This hinge is completely flush in the back. There's no gaps or anything. This one is not. Again, along with it not being a snap closure or a screw closure or something like that, it's one where I don't necessarily feel like it would, because the hinge doesn't open super easily. Like I'm sitting here trying to like kind of act like it's jostling around or breaking something. Like it feels like you have to open it to a certain level or have it pried open a certain bit to keep it open, or else it's going to stay shut. So I don't feel like it's something I would be particularly worried about if I put it in my bag. It would open or something would jostle it and cause it to open, and now I have eyeshadow all over everything. But if you have a lot of pointy things that may like somehow pry into it, it's like, I don't know again whether that would impact the packaging. However, eyeshadow isn't necessarily something I find in my makeup routine that I bring along with me, unless I already have it in a dedicated makeup bag for traveling or something like that. It's not something that I won't bring an eyeshadow for touch-ups, so I'm not putting it in my purse along with other stuff like that, if that makes sense. To sum up the packaging, I do like it. However, I can understand where some people may feel the kind of hard plastic and how light it is and think, okay, for $32, I may have wanted something that felt more luxurious. Again, this makes me feel like, with the color and the shape and just the vibe of it all, it makes me feel luxurious because it makes me feel like I'm a mermaid putting on her makeup. But for other people, they want their products to feel a little bit more weighty or something like that, and this isn't one of those products. Now to get into the performance, I wrote down the claims from both the Sephora app, which is one of the places it's sold, as well as from the Violette FR website. And the claims that I saw were that it's inspired by the effortless French eye look. It's a soft veil of diffused color with a cream to powder formula. It's supposed to look effortless and lived in. And something that I found interesting from the frequently asked questions part of the website, specifically of the Violette FR website specifically, because I did experience, if you saw, again, the first part of the video, a little bit of creasing, especially without using an eyeshadow primer. But I've also experienced a little bit of creasing using an eyeshadow primer if I didn't use, I guess, enough of an eyeshadow primer. I don't really know. But it said it is supposed to look effortless and lived in, so creasing is a natural part of how the formula settles. Other claims are that you can create more intensity by layering. It's a vegan and cruelty-free formula. It's a mistake-proof formula. And then as far as the instructions for using the product on the Violette FR website and on the box, it says using a finger or a brush, glide pigment across the eyelids, but on the Sephora website, it only mentions using a finger. So what are my thoughts on the claims? I do feel like this product does mostly hit on the claims. You guys have seen it on my eyes already a little bit. I've used it even in my last get ready with me or shop my stash type of video. The shade that I have on today is the Bronze d'Or shade. But again, you've seen how they look on me. I do feel like they give that effortless French girl type of look. Both of these are something that has a soft bit of color. You can build them up a little. I find that the matte shade in particular doesn't build up to what I would want it to look like on my eyes. And the more I try to build this up, again, even with a primer, the more it creased at the end of the day, again, even with a primer. So it's one that I didn't necessarily want to build up a lot. But I also feel like part of the reason I wanted to build up this shade to a certain degree is to see if it would get any darker, because I don't necessarily love this shade on me. I'll do a little swatch. Again, it looks like a kind of milky, neutral brown shade with maybe a tinge of pink in it. But as you can see on my skin tone, there is just the slightest bit of almost ashiness. So that's kind of one layer of it. And then again, if I build it up on top, yeah, the color is building, but I feel like the ashiness is also building, and that's how I feel like it is on the eye. So this is not one that I actually really like using as an all over the lid French girl type of look. I do find myself often mixing it with other shades or another shade, especially the way that I used it the last time I used this shade in particular was taking the Glossier Skywash, like using this all over my lid and then blending it a little bit into the crease and then blending this Glossier Skywash. I believe it's the shade Echo. I don't know if they've discontinued these, but it's kind of a deeper brown shade, and I would put that in the outer corner and then blend it a little bit into the crease along with this to kind of get it to not look as ashy in the crease. And that's the main thing, right? Like a shade can look a little bit lighter or almost ashy on the eyelid for me, for the makeup that I prefer. I should say that. But when it looks ashy in the crease, it just doesn't look good. It looks a little bit dated and kind of like, oh, this is back to the days where they just didn't really make products deep enough, so we kind of had to look a little bit of a mess, or we weren't able to add definition and depth to our eyeshadow looks. And that, for that reason, like I said, the other shade that they have, which is also a kind of neutrally-ish brown, I would feel like that shade might work better on my skin tone or even a little bit deeper. I don't feel like they have really a shade of brown in particular in this lineup that would work for a deeper complexion or a much deeper complexion than me. I feel like you almost, if you want any depth to your look and you have a deeper skin tone than I do, you are almost relegated to using the black shades in the, what do you call it? Or I should say the charcoal shade specifically for the matte formula. I feel like the shimmer formulas would actually be a little bit better and flex a little bit more for more skin tones. I will somewhat agree, which I mean, it's a big claim to make for any product to say that it's mistake proof, but I will say because it's so soft and diffuse and it blends out pretty well even with your finger, and because it has just that general diffused color look, it is very easy to make an eye look out of this without having to be super precise, which is a good thing because if I'm being completely honest, I don't love how these work with a brush. I feel like using your finger is the best option because with most brushes that I tried, I wasn't able to really pick up the product enough to make an impact, especially not with this matte shade. Again, with certain brushes, and in particular, this is the only brush that I've found in my personal collection that works for this, but it is the eyeshadow brush that used to come in the Urban Decay Naked palettes, which is like, I mean, you can't really go out and buy this brush. I'm sure there's a brand that has something similar, and I don't know whether this is a synthetic. I want to say it's probably a synthetic bristle brush, but there's just something about the bristles, like the type of bristles they are, along with the like fluffy and density. Like this is both a fluffy and dense brush. I just feel like this brush works well to lay down the color and diffuse it into the crease a little. Again, I used it with the other shade today, or I guess I should say the shade that I'm wearing on my eyes today. So again, I do feel like it works a little bit better with a finger, or a little bit more reliably with a finger. But if you find a brush that it works well with, then you know you can use a brush. Since we swatched the Late Au Cafe shade, let's go ahead and swatch, even though again it's on my eyes today. That is one pass of the Bronze d'Or shade, and it's really pretty. I do quite like it. I feel like it has a good bit of base color, and I do feel like this one builds up nicely as well. That's what they look like together. And again, I do feel like they kind of have pairings for each of the shades that they offer, and that this is the kind of pairing that ends up with a kind of smoky, bronzy, but still a little like pink toned. However, something I did notice, which I noticed in the what do you call it section, the first impression section, but I noticed it with the more formulas I used these with and such. This matte formula in particular, I feel like dulls the look of the shimmer. I don't know if it's the way that it is mixing with this eyeshadow, but also with other eyeshadows, I noticed this. You can tell on my hand and even on my eye when my glasses aren't reflecting so much light that this has a good bit of shimmer. It's like reflective in that very almost piecey reflective type of way, and it looks beautiful. But when I layer it on top of this matte shade versus using it alone or even using it with other matte shades, I feel like it dulls down the shimmer. And I again commented on that and was like, hey, I need to use it with other eyeshadow formulas, and consistently I find that it dulls down other formulas. Even using it with this matte shade, this shows up much deeper on my skin alone than it does, which could be just simple color theory. A lighter color mixing with a deeper color is going to be deeper than the lighter color, but lighter than the deeper color. But I feel like, again, it does it to the point where it's noticeable. And sometimes if I'm trying to layer to build up the color, it feels like it's just endlessly mixing together versus being able to layer on top and add more depth or add more shine. The claim in particular, I did want to point out that I'm not sure I necessarily love being a claim, despite it, I guess, being a part of like the effortless French girl, French makeup rather, type of look, is that it says it's supposed to crease, or that the creasing that you'll experience is a natural part of how the formula settles. It's like, okay, without the eyeshadow primer, that's one thing. I feel like eyeshadow primer was made for people who have oilier eyelids or who want to stop their eyes from creasing, who have more lines on their eyelid. You know, that's what that product is made for, and not all eyeshadows formulas were made to be like long lasting, suck all of the oils out of it. Like there's some out there, I'm sure, but not all of them were made to be like that. I totally get that, but I feel like it's a little bit, I don't want to say a cop-out. I don't feel like cop-out is necessarily the right answer, but especially given that I don't feel like with other eyeshadow formulas, I have to monitor how much primer I'm using. I feel like I can just swipe a few, you know, little dots on and go, and that's usually good enough. But this is one where I noticed, again, if I didn't use enough eyeshadow primer or didn't blend it evenly enough across my eye, I did notice creasing in the formula. And it's just kind of like to build in the creasing as a feature, even if I use a product that is supposed to prevent that creasing and that I generally don't have that issue with any other eyeshadow formula with. It's kind of like, are you putting this claim in there because when you went into product testing, it wasn't as long lasting, or you noticed more creasing and then just said, okay, we're just going to be apart. Like it sometimes feels like it might be building in a feature that is actually a negative, or seemingly a negative. Of course, you may want that type of look where it's messy and lived in and stuff like that, but your makeup can look messy and lived in and grungy and all of those things without having just like the lines of creasing. And this is again an instance where I actually didn't mind the creasing as much, and I don't actually experience as much creasing with the more shimmery shadow with the Bronze Day Aura shade versus the, what do you call it, this cafe all or late all cafe shade. I feel like just seeing the lines so intensely and then it having this almost like milky kind of ashy undertone to it in some lights, it just, I didn't feel like looked very great on me. Maybe if it was a little bit of a deeper shade and it again gave that actual grungy, lived in, I slept in my makeup type of creased look, I might be a little bit more forgiving for it, but it just didn't really work with that particular shade. So all in all, overall thoughts on this, do I think it is worth the price? I feel like that is up to every individual person. I would say I would probably skip, given the color, what do you call it, the color selection, as well as the performance of this particular matte shade on myself. I would probably skip on the matte shades. I feel like there are other matte liquid products, or cream and liquid or cream to powder products that work a little bit better, that have more interesting shades or better shades for someone of my skin tone. Like, even I'm gonna be honest, with this being that cream to powder kind of plushy formula, as I said earlier in the video, it's very similar to a kind of Super Shock product or a ColourPop Super Shock formula, and it's just kind of like you could go and get a ColourPop Super Shock in a shade that works for you, because I feel like they have a wider array of shades, and get kind of the same, if not better, wear out of it. I personally have never tried any of the Super Shock shadows. I've only tried their cheek products that are in the Super Shock formula, but I don't feel like ColourPop would be as popular for their Super Shock formula if the eyeshadows didn't work well. So again, I feel like I would skip on the matte and probably go for something like that, or again, another brand that has a wider array of matte shades to choose from, some that are a little bit deeper. And hey, maybe if I tried the slightly deeper matte shade that this is in, I might feel a little bit differently. For the shimmer shade, I'll say the same thing. Can you probably find a less expensive, or like a ColourPop Super Shock shadow that is a similar-ish or a similar enough shade to get something like this that has the nice reflective kind of piecey sparkle to it? Yes, I absolutely feel like you can probably find, like, even this, not necessarily similar formula as far as the cream to powder formula, but I have shades that are like this, and I know that because I picked up on it and I was like, I like this shade so much, and it reminds me of some of these other shades that I like. And in particular, I'll bring it out. I may have already done this in the other part of the video, but I'll say it again to reiterate it. This shade reminds me so much of some of my favorite shades in the side to side or just Nabla Cosmetics palettes in general, but in particular, it reminds me of Better Society. And Nabla, I think you can only buy them on their website. And yeah, I don't know if you see what Better Society looks like in my pan, but you can see that it's like my most used shade in this eyeshadow palette for sure. I would say it has maybe a little bit more of a silvery pink sparkle, but it's still something that is very similar, has that like PC shimmer on the eye. And it's something where I've thought, like, if I ran out of that shade, I would rebuy this whole palette for that shade in particular because I love it so much. But as I was saying, I believe Nabla is only available on their website now. They used to be available at Ulta, but I guess they got pulled for whatever reasons. But now that I have tried the Nabla Cosmetics, this specific shade, the Bronze d'Or, I could see myself repurchasing because I've tried it. I don't know that I would have necessarily gravitated towards this if I saw it in store, or maybe if I had swatched it on my hand, I would have picked it up, but I don't necessarily think that this is a product I would have naturally gravitated toward. I'll admit that. However, after trying it and liking this shade and seeing how similar it is to that shade I have from Nabla, it's one where it's just like, okay, I would potentially repurchase this versus repurchasing a whole palette for one shade, repurchasing just this shade and not have a whole bunch of duplicates, you know? And in a perfect world, I would be able to find an exact duplicate, or we'd be able, actually in a perfect world, we'd be able to rebuy only the pans of eyeshadow that we ran out of. But because we can't, again, in the event that I ever run out of my beloved Better Society shade, this is a good enough stand-in for me that I can get the vibes that I want from it. And again, wouldn't have to repurchase a whole other palette. I could just purchase the individual shade. Anywho, the too long didn't listen, too long didn't read it version of my review is, I would say, maybe try out the shimmers. The shimmers seem a little bit more interesting both in color and are a little bit, in my opinion, from what I've tried, a little bit more my speed as far as even use and performance. But overall, do I feel like this is kind of a super expensive, without having tried a Super Shock eyeshadow, but only knowing the general formula, do I feel like it's just a kind of more expensive Super Shock shade? A little bit. I'll admit, like I said, I probably wouldn't have gravitated towards these, outside of the packaging being so cute, wouldn't have gravitated towards the colors themselves. If I was scrolling on Sephora.com, I would have just been like, oh, more individual eyeshadows, or, you know, more cream eyeshadows, cream to powder, whatever, just more eyeshadow, more kind of boring-ish shades. Even though I might like these type of shades, I might get use out of these types of shades. Again, I have them in my collection. I realize it's like, oh, you're calling a shade kind of similar-ish. And I mean, it's a little bit deeper, but you see how it kind of has the PC-ish type of shimmer. And when I mix this in with a deeper crease shade, it gives the same look as this one. But anyway, like, you get what I'm saying. Like, they look kind of within the same realm, close-ish enough for me to kind of get the same vibes from them when the look is all done. So you probably, or maybe you don't, but you might have something that is similar in your collection already. I don't necessarily think this is like the be-all end-all eyeshadow formula, but if you're looking for something to splurge on, you have finished some of your eyeshadows and are just wanting to have a little bit more of a capsule collection, if you don't have any eyeshadows and you like the colors, and especially I could see these being really good for beginners, which is a little paradoxical with the price point of them, obviously, but I could see them being somewhat good for beginners in that they have a formula that blends out really easily. You can blend it out with your finger and it doesn't really ever look like, if it does look messy, I feel like with the shades that I have, it's hard to make them look messy, but if it does look messy, if you have some of the more grungy colors, they're intentionally messy versus it just looking like you don't know how to use eyeshadow yet. Anywho, those are my thoughts on these eyeshadows. That's my full review. Again, if you boil it down to a question of would I buy them or not, I don't feel like I could give a specific yes or no answer. If you ask me, do I think they're worth the price? Again, maybe the shimmery ones in my opinion would be, but the matte ones a little less so based on my experience with the shades that I have. If you ask me, do I think it's worth it for you to buy? I can't answer that because only you know whether, based on what I've talked about and the shades and your research on these products, whether or not you think this is something you would actually enjoy. And I hope that you make the decision that makes you happy and that is best for your budget regarding these products. It may be a little bit of a splurge item, but sometimes it's okay to have a little bit of a splurge if it's something that you're really interested in and you know you're gonna get use out of. Anywho, I hope this video was helpful. Please let me know what other talking points or review points you would like to see for reviews in the future, what other products and types of products you want to see in the future, just how I can better refine this series and, you know, keep it something that is helpful but still hits, again, all of the points that I need to without hopefully being too long, because again, you guys know I love to talk. Anyway, I hope you're staying safe and healthy wherever you are when you're watching this, and I will talk to you guys in the next one.